Monitor quality is generally thought as four things: pixels per inch, the ideal viewing distance, the screen quality, and refresh rate and response time. People argue 1440p is better than 4K, not because the resolution itself is better, but because it fits more of these categories easier, and is more affordable for more people and more practical and more setups. Though I hear a lot of misconceptions, or sometimes hear a lot of talk as if 4K is just a waste, as if all that extra computing power really goes to nothing because 1440p is either good enough or just as good. In today's video, we're going to be comparing a 1440p and a 4K monitor and seeing the hidden costs and benefits to both configurations. A 32-inch monitor, like the version we have right here, is 140 pixels per inch, and it has an ideal viewing distance of 25 inches away. That means I can get fairly close to a 32-inch 4K monitor and really have it wrap around me. Compare that to 1440p monitor, 27 inches like the one we have here. This is 109 ppi with a 32-inch ideal viewing distance. Now I know many people, and probably most people, view it closer than that, especially if you're doing something like gaming, but they really calculate that based on text accuracy. What most people fail to mention, however, is that pixels per inch doesn't tell the whole story, not even in text viewing or in general content usage. There's a secret category not often mentioned in Reddit monitor discussions, which is content viewing experience. People sometimes act as if a higher pixels per inch equals better, but that's not necessarily true. Yes, that does mean, for instance, if I pull up a Wikipedia article, I'm going to have a much better time viewing it on a 32-inch monitor versus a 27-inch 1440p monitor. The text is going to be sharper, there will be more of it. Of course, I'll be able to compact more in a smaller space, meaning even if I'm viewing the same amount of content, it'll just generally look clearer, and also I can fit more on. But that's really a factor of size. Even with a low PPI, that doesn't mean that your screen is bad. Or if you have a high PPI, that doesn't mean your screen is good, at least not for all scenarios. Take, for instance, the popular demand for 40 to 50 inch 1080p TVs that we've mostly experienced throughout the 2010s, right? People flocked to them not just because they were better than 720p, but because they had a generally good viewing experience. If all people cared about was PPI, then they would have kept 1080p TVs in the size where their PPI was greater than 720p TVs, which wouldn't really be hard because those had to be fairly small for text quality purposes. But no, they blew those out way bigger than they were supposed to be. You know, you only have a 93 PPI at 24 inches. At 50 inches, what's that going to be, right? Theoretically awful if you approach it from the mindset that higher PPI equals better. But people enjoyed it perfectly well until 4K TVs came along. And even now, I would say if you have a 1080p TV and you're not using it that often, or you really don't care that much, right? It'll still be perfectly fine, and even more, a pretty good experience. On the other end of the spectrum is something like phones. Phones have an incredibly high PPI, at least most of them if you get a newer model, such as iPhones. Most iPhones nowadays have PPIs of 460. Some Android models even have higher PPIs. Does that mean that we're going to watch the newest IMAX movie on our phone? No, of course not. We don't even use our phones for heavy text processing or coding or anything like that, because the content viewing experience is pretty bad, If someone told you to game on your phone because it probably has a higher resolution and a higher PPI than your monitor or most monitors on the market, you'd tell them that they were crazy, right? Because the content viewing experience is horrible. And yet, in the 1440p versus 4K discussion, often all people talk about is pixels per inch. The only value there is to pixels per inch as a measurement is directly linked to the type of content that you're viewing. For movies, it doesn't really matter that much. Even 4K TVs at the giant sizes they're at right now have PPIs that are less than a lot of 1440p monitors. For games, it doesn't matter as much as people think, right? Especially, I think the screen quality, as whether you have an OLED or what your refresh rate is, whatever, tends to matter more. If you're doing text processing, if you're reading an article, like I said, pixels per inch can matter a great deal, but still, size matters. For our discussion, this really complicates things, and it throws a wrench in the easy discussion of, oh, well, 4K has a higher pixels per inch, or 1440p has enough, because it adds a new element, and it really personalizes the discussion. I can confirm from personal experience, you really won't tell the difference if you're sitting fairly close to the 27-inch monitor. If you get an ultra-wide 1440p monitor, you can get most of the crispness of 4K, and then you can even get the added benefit of the more performance and the wider horizontal distance. This can be a really good compromise for most people without getting the drawbacks of the 4K. Yet, like I said before, this only appeals to the one scenario of sitting fairly close to the 27-inch monitor. Because one benefit of a greater resolution is that you can achieve a greater size. A greater size screen is better on a lot of cinematic content and on large workflows, almost regardless of sharpness. I would find that if I were to work with a 32-inch 1440p monitor versus a 24-inch 1080p monitor, I wouldn't care that they have about the same text clarity. I would like the extra size of the 1440p 32-inch. And it's why most people generally don't opt for 4K 27-inch monitors, even though they have crazy high pixels per inch, because the text viewing experience and the experience of cinematic content is kind of wasted on that pixel density. It doesn't really look any better. Since 1440p already looks identical to 1080p when you stretch it out to 32 inches, 27 inches is the practical limit to how big you can make a 1440p monitor while still maintaining gains in text clarity. That does not apply to 4K. One of the biggest benefits to 4K is that you can have a literal TV with the same or better sharpness than a 1440p monitor. That's a fourth of its size. All this pixel density and the sheer amount of pixels is the very reason why 4K is expensive, however. And if you don't really care to have something above 27 inches, or even 32 inches if you don't care that much about text clarity, 4K becomes a moot point. The truth is, people are justified in saying a 27-inch 1440p monitor is the sweet spot for most gamers specifically. Most people won't use their home monitor for any large amount of productivity. Most people use a TV for cinematic content, at least the stuff that they actually care about, and they don't mind watching YouTube on a smaller screen. If you're having trouble deciding which monitor is for you, I'll play a couple clips of actual gameplay footage so you can see which screen size you prefer. Unfortunately, you aren't able to mirror games in two different resolutions, so this will just be 1440p, and then on the 4K monitor it'll be scaled. But YouTube won't be able to show the full 4K image anyways, so this is more about size than anything else.
If I take it out, it should slow down any reinforcements.
This is just my profession.
Double kill. Headshot. Double kill.
Let me ask you some questions.
Double kill. Double kill. Double kill.
There goes my sweet reputation.
Checkpoint.
Incendio. Expelliarmus. Incendio. Arresto Romantic. Go far. Incendio. Incendio.